There is a poison your body is built to want. It damages your liver, it scrambles your brain, it kills more people every year than every illegal drug on Earth combined, and at the end of a long, hard day, a glass of it is the first thing a huge part of the planet reaches for. You think you learned to like alcohol? You think it is a taste you acquired, a grown-up habit, a choice. It is not. Your body was craving this exact molecule for 10 million years before the first human was ever born, before farms, before cups, before language. The reason a cold drink feels so good is not in your culture. It is written into a single ancient change in your genes, and it starts with a small, drunk animal falling out of a tree. And that is the strange thing about alcohol. Almost everything about it should repel you. It is literally a toxin. Your body treats it as a poison and works frantically to break it down, and in large amounts it will straightforwardly kill you. And yet the pull is nearly universal. Every populated continent, independently, found something to ferment and drink. That is not what a random cultural habit looks like. That is what an instinct looks like. So the real question is not why some people drink too much. The real question is deeper and stranger. Why would evolution build an animal that is drawn, helplessly, to a poison? There are a few layers here. The answer is older than our whole species, and by the end, you are going to see your Friday night drink as a fossil. Let us go. Start with what alcohol actually is, because it is not some clever human invention. Ethanol, the alcohol you drink, is what you get when yeast eats sugar. That is all fermentation is. Tiny fungus floating in the air, landing on anything sweet, and turning that sugar into alcohol as its waste. It happens on its own, everywhere, with no human involved at all. Leave fruit juice in the warm long enough, and it will turn boozy by itself. Which means alcohol was not waiting for us to discover it. Alcohol has been bubbling up out of rotting, ripening, sugary fruit for tens of millions of years, long before there was anyone around to pour it into a glass. Bees make it, elephants stumble into it, whole forests quietly brew it every autumn. The question was never how we made it. Nature was making it the entire time. The real question is why, out of all the animals that met this molecule, we are the one that fell so completely in love with it. And the story most people carry in their heads is wrong. The usual version goes like this. About 10,000 years ago, humans invented farming, grew a surplus of grain. That grain fermented more or less by accident. Someone brave drank it, liked it, and beer and wine were born. A fun little accident of civilization. But that timeline cannot be the real origin, because our love of alcohol is far, far older than farming. 10,000 years is nothing. The pull toward this molecule was already sitting inside our ancestors millions of years before anyone planted a single seed. Farming did not give us the taste for alcohol. Farming just finally let us mass-produce something we had already been chasing, in the wild, for an unimaginably long time. So before we get to where that craving actually comes from, a question for the comments, and be honest. What is the first drink you reach for when the day is finally over and you just want to feel human again? And here's the part I actually want to know. Do you reach for it because you genuinely decided to, or because something in you just wanted it before you thought about it at all? Drop it below, because in a few minutes I am going to show you the exact ancient reason that pull exists, and it is going to make that innocent glass look a lot older and a lot stranger than you ever thought it was. Here's the first real clue, and it is hiding in fruit. For most of the time our ancestors existed, they were not hunters on a plain. They were primates in the trees, and their fuel was fruit. Sweet, ripe, sugar-packed fruit was the jackpot, the richest, fastest energy in the whole forest. But ripe fruit has a clock on it. The moment it is ready, the same yeasts we just met begin to feast, and the sugar starts turning to alcohol. A perfectly ripe fruit is already faintly alcoholic. An overripe one, sitting on the forest floor, can carry a real kick. So for a fruit-eating ape, the smell of alcohol was never the smell of a party. It was the smell of food that is ready, right now, before it rots away. And that changes everything, because it turns alcohol into a signal. Ethanol is light, it evaporates fast, and it drifts a long way through the air. A ripe fermenting fruit is quietly broadcasting a plume of alcohol vapor across the forest, like a scent flare that says food, over here, sugar, now. An animal that could smell that plume, follow it, and feel drawn toward it would find the richest calories in the forest before its rivals did. Suddenly, the attraction to alcohol is not a flaw at all. It is a homing beacon. The apes who loved that smell ate better, survived better, and had more children than the apes who did not. And you are their descendant. When you catch the smell of wine and something in you leans in before you have decided anything, that is not sophistication. That is a 50-million-year-old nose telling you it has found the ripest fruit in the forest. That pull you feel is the beacon, still switched on. So the craving is not about the drink, and it is not about our species. It is about fruit, and it is old. But there is a catch, a real problem that had to be solved first. Because ethanol is still a poison. An animal that gorges on fermenting fruit should get clumsy, fall out of the tree, and get eaten. The smell might lead you to the food, but the food itself could disable you. For the beacon to be worth following, our ancestors needed one more thing, a way to actually handle the alcohol, to burn it as fuel instead of being floored by it. And the moment one line of apes evolved, everything changed. That single change is the reveal, and we can date it almost to the year. Here it is. Around 10 million years ago, in one of our distant ape ancestors, a single letter of DNA changed in the gene for an enzyme called ADH4, the enzyme that breaks down alcohol in your body. Before that mutation, our ancestors could barely process ethanol at all. After it, that one tiny tweak made the enzyme about 40 times more efficient. Overnight, on the scale of evolution, a whole line of apes went from being poisoned by fermenting fruit to being able to eat it, digest it, and turn its alcohol into pure energy. That is the drunk monkey hypothesis. We did not invent drinking. We were rebuilt, at the level of our genes, to run on the one food nobody else could safely touch. You were born pre-adapted to alcohol. It is not a habit, it is equipment. If the idea that your taste for a drink is a 10-million-year-old piece of biological equipment is new to you, subscribe, because that is exactly what this channel does. It takes the things you assume are modern choices and shows you the ancient machine running underneath them. And stay with me, because the proof of when this happened is written, letter by letter, in the DNA of you and every ape alive today. And we are not guessing at that 10-million-year date. Scientists did something clever. They dug up the ADH4 gene from across the whole primate family tree, resurrected the ancient versions of the enzyme in the lab, and tested them. The upgraded alcohol-crushing version shows up in exactly one place, in the shared ancestor of humans, chimpanzees, and gorillas, right around the time that ancestor was coming down out of the trees and starting to spend real time on the ground. And that is the key. On the ground is where the fallen, bruised, heavily fermenting fruit collects. The apes who stayed in the branches ate fresh fruit. The ones learning to walk the forest floor were suddenly living off the boozy windfall, and they were the ones who needed to handle it. The timing is not a coincidence, it is the whole story. Think about what that meant for a hungry ape. The fruit still up in the tree is contested, fought over, picked clean. But the fruit on the ground, the overripe, fermenting, faintly alcoholic windfall that everyone else avoids because it makes them sick, that is a free buffet with almost no competition. The one animal that could eat the rotting fruit without being poisoned had found a private food supply the rest of the forest was throwing away. In a world where every calorie is a fight to the death, that is not a small edge. That is the difference between starving in a lean season and walking through it fat and fine, eating the food nobody else could stomach. And there is a second reason evolution loved this, beyond just tolerating the poison. Alcohol itself is fuel. Gram for gram, ethanol carries nearly twice the energy of sugar or protein, almost as much as pure fat. To a starving ancestor, a belly full of fermented fruit was not just a meal, it was one of the most energy-dense meals available anywhere in nature. So the mutation did two jobs at once. It stopped the alcohol from disabling you, and it let you cash that alcohol in as raw calories. The thing we now count as empty and unhealthy, the thing we are told to cut back on, was once premium survival fuel. Your body still treats it that way. That is a big part of why it is so hard to say no. And this ancient link to food is still buried in your body, in a way you can feel. Have you ever noticed that a drink before dinner makes you hungrier? There is even a word for it, the aperitif, the drink that opens the appetite. That is not a coincidence, and it is not just in your head. Alcohol genuinely switches on the circuits that make you want to eat. And of course it does. For 10 million years, the smell and taste of alcohol meant one specific thing was nearby: ripe, sugary, high-calorie fruit. So your brain learned the rule deep in its wiring. Alcohol means food is here, so get ready to eat. The pre-dinner drink is not a modern invention. It is you, obeying an instinct older than your species. So here's the second question, and I am genuinely curious how this splits. Now that you know a drink is basically your brain shouting that ripe fruit is nearby, does it change anything about how it feels? Are you the kind of person who feels that pull hard, who really has to think about it, or does it barely tug at you at all? Because that difference between people turns out to be genetic too, and we are getting to that. Tell me below where you land, and then let us meet the other animals who inherited the very same craving, because we are absolutely not the only ones staggering around this forest. Because if this really is ancient biology and not human weakness, other animals should show it too, and they do. Deep in the rainforests of Malaysia, there are tiny pen-tailed tree shrews that drink fermented palm nectar every single night, taking in the human equivalent of several glasses of wine, and they never appear drunk. Their bodies just handle it. In cold autumns, flocks of waxwings gorge on berries that have fermented on the branch and get so intoxicated they crash into windows and tumble out of the air. And moose, huge moose, will binge on fermenting fallen apples and stagger about, and every so often one gets its head stuck in a tree, blind drunk. The craving for alcohol is not some uniquely human vice. It is scattered right across the animal kingdom, wherever there is fruit that ferments. But here is the flip side, the antithesis, and it is just as revealing. Plenty of animals cannot handle alcohol at all, and the pattern tells you exactly what it is for. Cats have almost no ability to break it down. So do dogs, which is why even a little can seriously poison them. What do those animals have in common? They are meat eaters. They did not evolve on fermenting fruit, so they never needed the machinery to deal with the alcohol in it, and they never built it. The ability to drink and survive is not spread randomly. It tracks almost perfectly one thing: whether your ancestors lived on fruit. Alcohol tolerance is the fingerprint of a fruit-eating past. We have it in abundance, and that tells you everything about where we come from. Now jump forward tens of millions of years to the moment that changed our species: farming. And here's a genuinely radical idea that some archaeologists take completely seriously. What if we did not settle down and invent agriculture to make bread? What if we did it to make beer? It sounds absurd until you look closely. Some of the very oldest evidence we have of people gathering in large numbers and of the first attempts to grow grain sits right alongside evidence of brewing. At a 13,000-year-old site, researchers found what looks like the remains of ancient beer, older than the oldest known bread. The theory is that the craving came first, and the entire farming revolution, the foundation of civilization itself, may have been dragged into being partly by our ancient thirst. And once people could brew on purpose, alcohol earned its place for reasons that had nothing to do with getting drunk. Fermenting grain or fruit was a way to store calories that would otherwise rot, a liquid pantry that lasted through the winter. It was also, for a long stretch of history, safer than the water. The same alcohol that is mildly toxic to you is more toxic to a lot of the bacteria that lurked in dirty water, so a weak beer could be a cleaner drink than what came out of the river. For thousands of years, in many places, people of every age drank a light daily brew, not to get drunk, but simply to stay hydrated without getting sick. Alcohol was not a treat. It was infrastructure. There is one more thing alcohol quietly did for us, and it may be the most important of all. It loosened us up. A little alcohol lowers the guard, softens the fear, makes strangers talk, makes rivals laugh, makes a nervous group of people relax into something like a community. In a species that survives entirely on cooperation, a substance that greases cooperation is worth a great deal. Feasts, deals, weddings, truces, funerals. Again and again across history, the cup is at the center of the moment where separate people become one group. Some researchers think this is exactly why drinking survived every attempt to stamp it out. A group that could bond over a shared cup simply held together better than a group that could not. There is even an idea that drinking together, out in the open, was a kind of honesty test. A person who lowers their guard in front of you and still does not turn on you is a person you can trust, and a shared cup was the oldest way to watch someone drop that guard on purpose. The drink was not just fuel for the body. It was social software, a chemical shortcut to the trust that holds a tribe together. So if alcohol was food, medicine, and social glue, where did it all go so wrong? The answer is the single most important idea in this whole story, and it is about dose. For 10 million years, the only alcohol our ancestors ever met was weak. A little ethanol, diluted inside a whole lot of fruit, taken in slowly as you ate. Your body was built for that trickle. Then, in the blink of an evolutionary eye, we learned to brew stronger. And then, far worse, we learned to distill. Suddenly, the same craving built for faintly boozy fruit was aimed at spirits many times stronger than anything in nature. The instinct is ancient. The concentration is brand new. Your 10-million-year-old wiring is being handed a dose it was never, ever designed to survive. Which brings us to the honest part. Because this channel does not sell you comforting stories. You have probably heard that a moderate amount of alcohol is actually good for you, that a daily glass of red wine protects your heart. For years, that was the accepted wisdom. The problem is that the newest and most careful research has quietly taken it apart. Alcohol damages your liver, it shrinks and impairs your brain, and even at low doses, it raises your risk of several kinds of cancer. The largest reviews now land on an uncomfortable conclusion. When it comes to your health, there is no completely safe level of drinking. The perfect survival fuel of the ancient forest is, in the modern glass, quietly working against the body that still craves it. So why did we believe the opposite for so long? Because of a subtle trap in the data. When you compare drinkers to non-drinkers, the non-drinkers often look surprisingly unhealthy, and it is tempting to conclude that a little drinking must be protective. But look closer at who those non-drinkers are. Many of them do not drink precisely because they are already ill or because they used to drink heavily and had to stop. The group that abstains is quietly full of people whose health was already broken. Compared to them, moderate drinkers look great, not because the alcohol helped, but because the comparison was rigged from the start. Once you correct for that, the friendly little health benefit mostly melts away, and when scientists use people's genes to test it, comparing those who are born able to drink more with those who are not, the supposed benefit vanishes entirely. It was never really there. We wanted it to be true, so we believed a story the numbers were quietly telling us was false. And your body will tell you the truth about the dose if you listen to a hangover. That misery is not random punishment. It is the sound of a system built for a trickle being flooded. As your body breaks ethanol down, it passes through a harsh, toxic in-between chemical before it is finally cleared, and when you drink faster than you can process, that poison and the dehydration and the inflammation all pile up. For faintly alcoholic fruit, eaten slowly, your defenses are more than enough. For a night of strong drinks, they are hopelessly overwhelmed. It is the same story as almost every modern illness of excess. A body tuned by scarcity, suddenly drowning in abundance it was never designed to meet. The hangover is the exact feeling of an ancient piece of machinery being asked to do a job it was never built for, and failing. And in one enormous group of people, evolution is visibly trying to undo the whole thing right now. If you have ever seen someone go bright red, flushed, and ill after just a drink or two, you have watched this happen. It is common across East Asia, and it is not weakness, it is a gene variant. Their bodies get stuck at that toxic in-between chemical, letting it build up fast, so even a small drink feels awful. And here's the fascinating part. That variant seems to have spread widely only in the last several thousand years, around the same time as intense rice farming and abundant alcohol. In other words, once the dose got dangerous, a protective mutation that makes drinking unpleasant started to win. We spent 10 million years evolving toward alcohol. A huge slice of humanity is now, measurably, evolving back away from it. But for the rest of us, the old machinery runs unopposed, and that is where addiction lives. Alcohol reaches straight into the brain's reward system, the same dopamine circuit that evolved to scream yes at food, at sex, at everything that once kept us alive. To that ancient system, a strong drink is the richest possible jackpot, the exact chemical signal of high-value food, cranked far past anything nature could produce. For most people, the pull stays manageable. For some, that hijacked reward loop tightens into a grip that can take a life apart. And the cruelest part is that the same ancient wiring that makes the first drink feel so good is what makes the 20th so hard to refuse, because to your reward system, stopping feels like walking away from the richest food in the forest. It is not a moral failing. It is a 10-million-year-old survival circuit built to chase fermenting fruit colliding with a bottle it has no idea how to handle. So now go back to that glass at the end of a hard day, and you can finally see what it really is. It is not just relaxation, and it is not just habit. When you lift it, you are pulling a lever that your ancestors installed 10 million years ago. A lever that once meant safe, rich, life-saving food is here. Calm down. You are going to be all right. The warmth, the ease, the sense that the day is finally over. That whole feeling is an ancient reward for finding the richest food in the forest. That is why it works even when nothing in your modern life is actually being solved. The relief is real, but it is a receipt for a meal your ancestors ate, not a fix for the day you just had. You are not drinking to escape your life. You are answering a signal your body has trusted since long before your life, or anyone's, began. And that lands us right back on the pattern this whole channel keeps uncovering. We are the weird ape, the one that takes plain old biology and mistakes it for a modern choice. You think kissing is romance, and it turns out to be a chemical test. You think your dog chose you, and it turns out the wolves chose our fire. And now you think you learned to love a drink, and it turns out you were born already craving it 10 million years ago, in the body of a small ape eating rotten fruit off the ground. Every single time, the thing that feels like a personal choice turns out to be an ancient program, still quietly running you. And here's the twist I keep coming back to. We treat drinking as one of our most human rituals. The toast, the celebration, the drink that marks that you have become an adult. But it may be one of the least human things we do. One of the oldest instincts we still carry, handed down almost unchanged from an animal that could not think, could not speak, and simply smelled sugar rotting on the forest floor and staggered toward it. Every time you raise a glass and feel sophisticated, grown up, in control, a 10-million-year-old ape lifts it with you. And it is the ape, not you, who first decided that this was good. So the next time you feel that pull, the quiet little yes before you have even decided, remember what it actually is. It is not weakness, and it is not really even yours. It is 10 million years of ancestors, every one of whom survived a hungry season because they could eat the food that poisoned everything else, handing you an instinct they wrote long before there were words for thirst, or want, or whine. You did not learn to crave it. You inherited the craving, fully formed, and your body has been fluent in the language of fermenting fruit since long before you were ever born. So tell me in the comments, does knowing all this change the next drink for you, or does the ancient ape win anyway? And tell me honestly how hard that pull is for you, because I think the answers are going to surprise us both. If you made it this far, hit like and subscribe, because we are only getting deeper into the strange machinery your body runs without ever asking your permission. Next time, we go after the biggest one of all. Your body is not just wearing out as you age. A part of it is following a plan, a schedule, and instruction to stop maintaining you once you have done your job. Evolution does not want you to live forever. Evolution wants you dead. That is the next video. I will see you there.